Hi, everybody. I'm Traven Rice. I'm with the Lowdown Culture Cast, and we started this podcast to focus on culture changers here on the Lower East Side. And we've been covering the Lower East Side for a long time, so I'm fortunate to get to meet a lot of really interesting business owners, residents, artists, all kinds of people who are living down here doing really cool things. And today I'll be talking with Michelle Myles. She is the co-owner of Daredevil Tattoo and also knows a whole lot about the history of tattooing, which, by the way, started right here in the neighborhood on the Bowery. And she can tell us all about the dark days when it was such an underground kind of, much more rebellious thing than it is these days. And I think you've been giving tours for a while. She has a map of the neighborhood. And they also have a really cool museum in the shop that has a bunch of all kinds of different tools, historic photos.
Yep. Tattoo flash. It's what we call the artwork that you pick from when you go into a tattoo shop. The designs on the wall, that's tattoo flash.
Okay.
So we have a lot of tattoo flash.
I was like, you have flash?
Flash.
And so Michelle opened up Daredevil Tattoo first. When was that first opened?
We opened Daredevil in 1997 when tattooing was legalized in New York.
Right when it was legalized.
Yeah, it was illegal from 1961 until 97, but I actually started tattooing in the city in 1991, but it was illegal then, so I worked underground for 6 years, and when they legalized it, we opened up Daredevil.
Wow. So what was before 1960? It was not illegal?
Before 1997, it was illegal.
Yeah.
So in 1961, they banned tattooing in New York City. Nobody's 100% sure why, but at the time they blamed it on a hepatitis outbreak. And so I started tattooing in 91, and it was illegal, but it was completely unenforced. And so I used to tattoo cops all the time. They didn't care or anything. And it wasn't a criminal violation. It was a health code violation. So one time I looked up the law, and it was listed in between smoking on elevators and growing poison ivy in the city. So it wasn't like some big criminal offense or anything. And so people, by the time it was legalized, people were working very openly. Some people even had signs outside and everything. I used to advertise in the back of the Village Voice when it was illegal, so it wasn't a big deal. But and for that matter, part of the reason I think it stayed illegal for so long was because none of the tattooers actually wanted it legalized, because it kept all the competition out of the city.
Oh.
And we knew as soon as it was legal, there'd be 1,000 tattoo shops, which is what happened.
Yeah. So how did you learn to tattoo?
I didn't get a proper apprenticeship because since it was underground in New York, there weren't any shops to work out of or anything. But I found somebody to help me get started and kind of fumbled along, and then maybe a year in, I found a legal street shop out in Jersey to work out of. And it was this extremely, very busy shop. A lot of people went out to Jersey since it was legal there. It was a little bit easier to figure out who to go to get tattooed. And so it was in this neighborhood that it was in Montclair, and that town they had banned tattooing, and so this shop was grandfathered in, so they were in a very good position. It was a very busy shop, and I, basically 2 weeks working there was like 2 years fumbling along on my own, and I feel like that really was what taught me how to tattoo, was tattooing 8 hours a day, a few days a week.
And what drew you to it? What was it that was so alluring?
I got my first tattoo when I was in high school. So this would have been, it was like 1988, I think I got my first tattoo. I was a teenager, and as soon as I got tattooed, after that first tattoo, anytime I had some extra money, I would always go and get more tattoos when I could afford them. And I came to New York for art school, and my roommate started tattooing, and so that was kind of what gave me the idea. I was like, oh, if she could do it, then That's something I'd like to do. And the minute I started tattooing, I was just, that was it.
You were hooked.
Oh, yeah.
And then, so you were upset once they legalized it?
Yeah, I mean, definitely when I first heard, I remember I saw Clayton Patterson walking down the street, and he was like, hey, they're going to legalize tattooing. And I was like, oh, no, now I have to open a tattoo shop.
Wow. And then you found that space. The first one was, where was that first space?
It was at 172, 175. Now I don't remember. Ludlow Street. So actually directly behind where we're sitting right now, but on Ludlow. And the first place I worked out of on Ludlow was right above the old Ludlow Street Cafe. Mm-hmm. But then I had moved to, have you ever been to the second floor pianos? Mm-hmm. So that was my old loft, and so I used to tattoo out of there. Oh. And I was like living in the back and tattooing in the front, and it was like the old school LES thing where people would yell up and you'd throw the keys out the window at them. Uh-huh. And so that was where I was working when they legalized it. And so it wasn't really a place that would make a good legal tattoo shop. And I just spent all my money renovating that space, and my business partner I've known since high school, and he's a tattooer as well, and he would come up and visit me to work, and he was always like, hey, if they legalize tattooing, let's open a shop together. So when I found out, I called him, and I talked to my landlord, and they rented me the storefront. It was next to the old Pink Pony.
Uh-huh. Oh. And then you moved down to Division Street.
Yeah, we moved to Division Street about 10 years ago. And so now we're like right at Division, where there's that little, Dime Square is what they call it these days. So we're at Dime Square. But when we first moved there, Dimes wasn't open yet. It was a Chinese bus stop. So I got to say, Dimes was an improvement for me because
from the bus stop. So it's Division and Canal.
Yeah. So between Ludlow and Essex. Yeah.
Oh, so you were happy to get rid of the bus stop right there.
Oh, the bus stop was a nightmare. It's like they were coming into the shop all day long, trying to buy bus tickets, trying to use our bathroom. Whenever it would rain, they would all be underneath our awning. And so, that was aggravating.
So, yeah, I'm sure. How, it seems to me, I'm not an expert or aficionado. I do have a tattoo.
Okay.
But it seems to me like it has changed so quickly as far as kind of becoming mainstream. Was that your experience, or?
Oh, yeah, of course. It's, to me what's really weird is that I feel like all the changes have ran parallel with the changes in the neighborhood. And when I first moved down to Ludlow Street in 93, Ludlow was seedy, and, it's like people thought it was bad news down here. I loved it, but, and people felt the same way about tattooing. Mm-hmm, and It's crazy to me that the changes that have happened on the Lower East Side, but I feel like they're the exact same changes that have happened in tattooing. And I feel like the two of them have both been gentrified together, for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. And you can't stop any of it, and things change. That's just how things go. But I'm glad I got to be around when Lower East Side was kind of crazy, and I'm also glad I was around when tattooing was kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm. When you started doing it, was it uncommon to be a female tattoo artist?
Oh, just to be a girl with tattoos was crazy. When in the early 90s, what was wild was that I knew every girl who was heavily tattooed on the Lower East Side. Every single one. And you could pretty much count on one hand. And if you saw someone that you didn't know that had a lot of tattoos, girl, it was just like, whoa, who is that? Yeah, I remember there was Theo from the Lunatics, and my friend Jody Head, and there was very few. There was Agatha from New York Custom Leather. And,
so it was like an elite club.
Yeah, it was just this little club of us weirdos, and now it's wild because just so many people are heavily tattooed, and so many girls that are in their 20s are tattooed up to their ears, which, it's cool. It's all good. But yeah, it was a different scene back then.
I mean, it's almost rare now to meet somebody who doesn't have a tattoo.
Yeah, times have changed.
Yeah, yeah. And so how did the interest in the history part of it all get started?
Well, my business partner has always he's always been a very avid collector of antique tattoo stuff. And when we moved to the location we're at now, we decided to incorporate his collection of antique flash and machines into the shop as a museum. And we thought if there was any place that had to have a tattoo museum, it's definitely the Lower East Side, and I mean definitely New York, and definitely the Lower East Side, because the Bowery is where modern tattooing was invented, and we're right down the street from there. And so it was just kind of a no-brainer for us to do that and to share Brad's collection with the public.
Yeah, so I think maybe we could just do some descriptions of what's involved and what's included in that collection.
Maybe one of the most notable things, or kind of where it all started, is we have one of the Thomas Edison engraving pens that the very first electric tattoo machine was based off of. And there was a Bowery tattooer, his name was Samuel O'Reilly, who in 1891 he patented the first electric machine, and it was based off of this Thomas Edison engraving pen that Edison invented when he was working in a telegraph office, and it was the first patent for a motorized device in the United States. It's from 1876. So we have one of these Edison pens, which is a very significant thing to tattoo history, but also just, considering its history also in a broader sense, it's also an important artifact.
How did you come by it?
I think Brad got that off of eBay many, many years ago. And the thing is with collecting this stuff, because Brad started tattooing when he was 16 years old in the mid-'80s, and it was a much different thing collecting antique tattoo stuff, 10, 15 years ago, let alone 30 years ago. And so, these days, there's people that are outside of the tattoo community that are into collecting this stuff. So it's a much different thing. Like there's kind of really no way to get the collection that we have at this point in time, because, just people now appreciate the value of this stuff. But like there was one legendary tattooer on the Bowery, this guy Charlie Wagner, who passed away in 1953. And he was, very important to tattoo history, and he had a very long career on the Bowery. And when he died, the city came in and they took everything. The story is that they took everything and threw it in the dump. So it's like all that stuff that this legendary tattooer had, was literally trash to people. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of this stuff is very ephemeral, and, and a lot of it, hasn't survived. Mm-hmm. But, that's why we're so proud of this collection.
Mm-hmm. It's really cool. And I know you're also doing neighborhood tours, and you have a map that you've mapped out, and it's some really interesting drawings of all these historical sites.
Yeah, when we decided to open up the museum, that was when I really became more interested in the history of the old Bowery tattooers. And when we moved down there, since we were going to have this for people, I thought it would be cool to do research and to figure out where all these old tattooers worked. And so what's cool about the map that I made is that even people who know a lot about tattoo history were surprised to see how many tattooers were working on that little stretch from Chatham Square up to Canal Street. And, it's pretty crazy that they were all just crammed into that little spot. And, just the more I dug, the more names I found. And, and even last week I found another name. So it's I keep updating the map, because it's I'm always finding more information. And when I decided to put together a walking tour that was based off of my map. And so I'm actually a licensed New York City tour guide, and so I do these tattoo history walking tours through Airbnb experiences.
That's really cool. And have you found, so how have those gone, the interest-wise?
Oh, it goes great. I mean, I do them usually every week. Usually on Fridays, like 11 to 1. And it's great. I get people from all over the world coming on the tours, tattooers, but then people who don't know anything about tattooing. And to me, it's not just a tattoo tour. Like kind of like the two loves of my life, besides my husband and my dogs, are tattooing in New York City and specifically the Lower East Side. And so it's really interesting to me how the two are so connected to each other. And so my tour is also about like the broader history of the neighborhood and how the two of them grew up together.
And so this was the first place in the United States that tattooing kind of came to be?
Yeah, tattooing's earliest history, as far as like modern tattooing, not indigenous tattooing, really came out of sailor culture. And the first tattooer to open up a permanent place of business, the first like professional tattooer in the United States, was this guy Martin Hildebrandt, and he was working over on the Fourth Ward, which is over by like now it's the Alfred Smith houses over there. Mm-hmm. And he was first listed as tattooing in the New York City Directory in 1858.
Wow.
So New York's tattoo history goes back to before the Civil War.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. And I don't know, I'm just curious about what you would say. I'm sure people ask or you've thought about what it is about getting a tattoo that has this sort of allure to people.
I mean, I think it has this power to it, and it's just this really intense means of self-expression. And I think, especially now getting older, it's like, you have so many things that you can't control with your body. It's like it's always changing, or it might not look how you want it to look, and, all these kind of things you look at and you see that you don't like. But tattooing is like this really cool way that you can do something, make a change to your body that is something you chose and that expresses something that you like to look at and that makes you happy.
Mm-hmm. And that experience of giving that to somebody else, I mean, seems pretty intimate.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's a very cool job because I'm able to make these connections to just all different types of people. I mean, whether it's some guy who has a hedge fund or some like, crazy derelict from the neighborhood. It's just, kind of cuts across like all these differences.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any like harrowing stories or stories of like, what are your crazy experiences from the bad old days?
Well, I always say that, when I moved when I first saw like the ad to come, I was looking to find a place where I could work out of by myself. And I saw this ad in the back of the Village Voice for an apartment on Ludlow Street for $500. And I had this customer of mine he was a cop, and like I said, it was unenforced back then, so like cops used to get tattooed, no problem. And so I told him I was going to go check out this apartment, and he says to me, he's like, "Do not move to Ludlow Street. That is the worst heroin block in New York City." So of course I, moved down to Ludlow Street because the apartment was $500 a month. And I ended up tattooing all the drug dealers down here, and they never gave me any trouble.
How funny.
And I remember, like, one really funny thing relating to that is one time I had to go out to, like, Brooklyn for something, and this was, in the 90s, and it was, like, late at night. I had some, like, photo shoot or something for one of the tattoo magazines, and the photographer's loft was in this, like, really bad area, and so it was when you had to call up from the payphone, and so there's all these guys on the corner, and they're looking at me, and I was just like, oh, great, because I'm by myself, it's dark, and one of them starts walking over, and he's looking at me, and then he's like, "Michelle?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yo, I got tattooed at your shop."
Oh, how funny.
And he introduces me to all his friends, and
that's really funny.
It's kind of funny.
The way to kind of stay safe.
Yeah.
Ironically.
Tattoos have protected me over the years.
Yeah.
I definitely feel that.
How funny. And, I mean, what about different trends? I'm sure you've seen certain things come and go. I mean, how would you say it's changed as far as what people are looking for?
I mean, it's always changing, but I would say, maybe one of the biggest changes just maybe in all the time I've been tattooing is when I first started tattooing in the 90s, you couldn't give away traditional tattoos. Like, we used to have some copies of some flash from Brad's collection in the front of the old Daredevil. And people would come in and they'd be like, "Ugh, does anyone ever get that stuff?" And
Traditional meaning like?
they were like old sailor designs. And so people just like, they almost thought they were like a joke. And but then over the years, eventually traditional tattoos became very popular. And, now people love them. And it's, a very popular style of tattooing, which I can understand because, the traditional stuff is so timeless and so iconic. And there's something that, really resonates with people because they are these like simple designs that have so much power.
But people also come and say they want you to create something on your own, or they have some kind of idea.
We get everything. You have some people, they know exactly what they want. Other people, just say, "Well, what do you want to do?" And it can be anything.
Yeah, I have one I'd like to have redone.
That happens.
That happens. You're going to do some touch-ups and redesign sometimes.
Yeah, it happens.
Yeah. What about, like, where do you draw the line if somebody comes in and asks you for something? Is there any time when you're like, no, I won't do that?
There's not much because, generally, I feel like everybody gets the tattoo they deserve to some extent. If somebody wants a tattoo that says I'm an idiot, then, they probably are.
That's really funny. Well, thank you. So we can find your tours on Airbnb.
Yeah, if you go to my Instagram, Daredevil Michelle, I think I have a link on there to the Airbnb thing. And, or if you go to the Instagram for the shop, Daredevil Tattoo, you can find us there.
Okay, and I highly recommend just going in and checking out the collection as well.
Yeah, anybody's welcome to come check it out. We're open every day, 12 to 8.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me here.
Yeah, it was really fun.